Okay, peace and love, everybody. Tevin Townsend here. I'm gonna try this new YouTube live. I've been doing a whole bunch of Facebook lives for the past year, at least, and Facebook is cool, but I really want to see what I can pull off on YouTube. So, a topic hit me today, and it's because I've been seeing a lot of this going around on Facebook about smoking marijuana and tobacco, but how that's still bad for you, bad for the lungs. So let me break this down. Because when people use this argument, they're thinking on such a simplistic level that they're excluding the potential for greater human experience. And that's something you achieve from marijuana and something you achieve through the inhalation of smoke, of fire. So the first point I want to make, the first thing we all need to understand is that fire is an element, a natural element. If you are to ascend in life, if you are to be spiritually aligned, if you are to be in tune with nature, you have to study the elements. You have to embrace the elements, right? So that could be water, air, earth, fire. I'm not sure if there's just four elements, but no one's going to say fire is not an element. Okay, so we all can agree that fire is an element. By the way, you could say that the sun and solar rays is a state of fire, plasma, whatever you'd like to say. So the argument goes something like this. Smoke itself is bad for the lungs, which I don't disagree with that point. You know, smoke itself isn't something your lungs desire, okay? But with that said, when you use fire, like when you're cooking food or doing any kind of chemistry, you're essentially engaging in alchemy. And when you take fire and you do these sorts of things and you do alchemy, you achieve certain effects you otherwise couldn't achieve. So if you've ever experimented with drugs, I mean, let's just be real. You get different effects depending on how you administer it. Are you ingesting it? Are you sniffing it? Are you smoking it? Right? So you get different effects. The strength of those effects vary, and results are achievable through smoking marijuana or any kind of herb that you can achieve other ways. So where do I need to backtrack really quick? Here's something I learned over the past year. I spent a lot of time in Honduras. If you've been following me, you probably already know this. But while I was in Honduras, I'm just going to say I used to hang around a crowd that smoked weed every day. I'll just be straight up with you guys. And out there, you can find flanta leaf, you can find banana leaf, you can find tobacco leaf, all organic. This is stuff you actually wrap the herb with. Okay? And when people say smoking is bad for the lungs, they're talking about coughing, first and foremost. Anything that causes that kind of reaction, that's your body telling you, hey, it's something you shouldn't be doing, it's not healthy for you. I agree with that. But check this out. Most of the coughing comes from not knowing how to properly smoke, and it comes from the material you're using. If you go to the store and you buy those little cigarillo wraps, those paper wraps, that is actually what causes most of the coughing when you're smoking tobacco as well. That causes the coughing because the paper itself, that stuff is toxic, man. I don't know if you guys knew this, but that paper you wrap it with, any kind of paper you wrap herb with, it's toxic. That's the number one reason you're coughing. So if you wrapped it with organic leaf, not only does it burn better and smoother, but you're less likely to cough. I have a lot of experience with this. If you can find banana leaf, that's the smoothest stuff you'll ever find, I'm telling you. And then flanta leaf. Tobacco, not as good as those two, but still a much better alternative than this cigarillo paper, okay? So that's step number one. Once you do that, you're already very, very unlikely to cough unless you're just not used to smoking and pacing yourself. Number two is it's all about moderation. Okay. If I were to go take a jalapeno pepper or a red pepper, just a whole pepper, and I put it in my mouth, I would start coughing in a few seconds. Why? Now, it's not because the pepper is bad for me. In fact, peppers are really good for you. A lot of health benefits. What it means is that I try to consume too much at one time. That's what you have to understand. So when you are maybe smoking with a friend and you pass it to them and, they start coughing, what do? You tell them, hey, buddy, slow down. Don't try to hit it all at once. So it's all about moderation. Now, one thing I learned is, believe it or not, smoking is good for the lungs in a lot of ways because your lung is a muscle. So every time you practice inhaling and exhaling, you're actually strengthening your lung capacity and endurance. So when you're inhaling that smoke, you're making your lungs more resistant and you're increasing the capacity. I kid you not. If you sit down and you do this every day, you'll be able to hold your breath longer. And now I'm assuming you're doing it right and you're not smoking tobacco with nicotine and tar and all that other stuff. So when it comes to tobacco, that's nothing but straight cancer, one of the most cancerous substances on the planet. So don't mess around with that. But if you're smoking organic tobacco, organic herb, it's really not damaging your lungs unless you're doing it all wrong, unless you're doing too much at one time, or unless you're, I don't know, just trying to get high. There are other reasons to smoke. So I was breaking this down on a post one time because there are some people out there that are really convinced now that, oh my God, if I smoke it, I'm just killing myself. Well, and this is coming from the spiritual community, right? People are saying in order to ascend, you have to stay away from marijuana. All right, so if we go back to ancient history where people were actually spiritually aligned and in tune, I guess we got to go back about 500 or 1,000 years. There were plenty of rituals, plenty of traditions that involved the use of smoke, the use of fire, burning sage, burning herb, any kind of herb. It was a core of all of these traditions. Why? It's because if you study life, all right, if you study the breath, you'll understand that the breath is life. Now, fire is very closely related to the breath, except that fire is more so the excitation of spirit, the excitation of wind, okay? Fueled by wind and fueled by earth. This is something I learned. So the reason you see a lot of fire and a lot of spiritual practices is because they're trying to summon spirits or enter the spiritual realm. So once again, fire is the excitation of spiritual energy. Now, being that we know this is associated with spiritual practices, it would actually serve you to embrace that, to understand it in order to connect more with the spiritual realm. This was a point I made to someone and no one ever really thought about it, but that's really the truth. And so there's nothing about smoking that necessarily says you can't ascend. Now, when it becomes an addiction, an unhealthy habit, then yes, that's a problem. But the simple act of smoking actually, first of all, it can stimulate the pineal gland. Certain herbs can do that, especially sage. If you don't know what the pineal gland is, it's basically your connection to the spiritual realm. It invokes creative senses you never thought you had, ideas you never thought of before, right? And then it has healing properties. Anything that's an herb, no one is ever going to tell me that an herb is not good for you. Anything that comes from Mother Earth, don't ever let anyone tell you it is not good for you. I support anything that grows from the ground. To be honest with you, I even support what they call hybrids. If we're talking about Dr. Sebi and his list, I say straight up that corn is healthy. Celery is healthy. It's only a problem when it's not eaten in moderation, because then mucus starts to build up and you corrupt your alkalinity. But check this out, because I was thinking, how did smoking go from a spiritual tradition, something that was, venerated, into something that's very demonized today? And I said, you know what? The people that are running this world are so smart that they took everything we did in tradition, everything spiritually, and they demonized it. So they said we don't want these guys doing ayahuasca or smoking herb or whatever this is. And they said, you know what? We're gonna just co-opt that whole industry and start selling people something cancerous to smoke. And so then we're gonna blame these health problems on the act of smoking. And so now you've been convinced that you have to stay away from smoke, and you are excluding yourself from otherwise attainable experiences. Now, I'm not really someone that smokes much. It's really not even my thing. So I'm not an addict on here just complaining. But I think a lot of people are missing the big picture, and this idea that just because smoke is bad for the lung, it's just too simplistic. I gave another analogy pertaining to water. Water is one of the most healthiest elements for the human body. You're like 80% water too. Yet too much water and you develop water sickness. All right. So it's not so much the substance, it's the user, and in fact, how you're using it. So with that said, guys, I guarantee you, if I could get a group of scientists together and we could run this experiment on people smoking that probably have never smoked before, if we could run an experiment on them smoking for a whole month, using organic products, by the next month, they could hold their breath longer. Their cardiovascular system would be stronger. They probably have a greater awakened pineal gland. If they had vision problems, they might be cured. I could make a whole list. I bet you I could. So you guys know me, I only give straight facts. And that's what I've learned from smoking. That is what I've learned. Now, if you live in the States, I don't know where the heck you're going to find organic tobacco leaf or flanta leaf or banana leaf. When you're in Honduras, it's just everywhere because people collect it and they throw it in piles because they burn all the trash. They don't really take it out to a garbage disposal. So, I mean, it's just everywhere in the village. So I don't have much advice on that if you live in the States, but I'm telling you, man, the healthy alternatives are out there. And because you live in a world surrounded by these unhealthy alternatives, you now think that, what the act of what you're doing is unhealthy, when truly it's how you're doing it and what you're doing. So with that said, I will conclude this live. You all have a great day. But how do I conclude this? Wait, if there's an X button. All right, are you sure you want to stop screaming? Yes.